Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers podcast, where friends share music with each other, take turns giving an album to each other, like a book club for music. One day I'll come up with a smooth, fluid intro for the podcast, but today is not that day. You can figure it out. I'm Peter Rape, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team, my crew, my squad. We've got Brett.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
We've got Drew.
Every week you say, I'm the man with no plan. And then we very much have a pretty succinct structure to this entire
I've got
show.
notes, and we've got a game. Like, I literally have a running doc.
But then I'd have to come up with a new nickname. You know how long it takes me for me to come up with a new bit?
Yes,
I still say Buenos Nachos.
Buenos Nachos, amigo.
God damn. I'm not a very creative man. And of course, we've got Patrick.
Hello, after all of that.
Yes. We oft forgotten. The neglected Patrick. Oh, poor Patrick. Of course, we talk about music. We talk about an album. The provider of the album this week is Drew. Drew, what do you got for us this week?
It's weird that I'm providing this record, but it was actually sort of handed over to me.
Yeah, I handed it to you. Is everything I love. Give it. No, it wasn't me.
No, it was Patrick. Patrick was literally like, hey, I'm never going to bring this record on, but Drew, you should really listen to this band called Dreamcar. It's Davey Havok from AFI singing with the main instrumentalist from No Doubt playing instruments. And it's an 80s new wave band.
So there's going to be a lot of horns, because No Doubt's a ska band, right?
Yeah, it's going to be tons of horns.
I mean, there's some saxophone.
There is a saxophone. Oh, used to good effect, I might add. But he said, I'm never going to bring this, but I'm going to give this to you because you'll love it. And then I listened to it nonstop for like a week and a half, and I was like, God damn it, no, I've got to... If he's not going to bring it, I might as well do it.
Yeah, this is a really cool album featuring the least tough member of the Havok family. He's no Jimmy Havok. He's no Danny Havok. Hell, he's no Jessica Havok, but he's Davey Havok. For all the wrestling fans out there.
Yeah.
Nobody's nobody's gonna understand that, but I don't care.
Oh, I got it.
No, I super got. Dude, hi, I'm from Ohio.
But yeah, let's talk about expectations. Patrick, what were your expectations coming to this album?
As Drew said, I told him this existed. This was literally, I accidentally, in a conversation from work, someone told me that this existed. Didn't even know the name of the band, but just had heard that, apparently there was some band with, No Doubt and the guy from AFI. And I'm like, wait, what? Because I don't know if you know this about me, but, Teenage Patrick loved AFI. And Teenage Patrick also loved No Doubt.
What? You liked AFI?
Yeah.
That spoke to your aesthetic?
No, I'm such an AFI fan that I can't listen to anything they did after they left Nitro Records. That's how much of a fucking snob I am. But I was curious. I was morbidly curious because the rhythm section of No Doubt, the band, the three dudes that played the music are fucking awesome. And Davey Havok was someone who I used to like but hadn't liked in a very long time. So I was curious. And obviously, I enjoyed it enough to share it with Drew.
I actually like AFI past when all y'all want to shit on it, but I'm the one guy.
When all y'all, I've been shitting on AFI
since I want a mohawk, but Mom won't let me get one.
Hey, All Hallows is where AFI begins and ends.
It's like fucking. It's like.
Some of the other stuff was okay,
too
but it
much
wasn't.
Whoa and I was not the target audience.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
So, like, earlier this week, I was like, hey, we're going to listen to... I completely farted out what any of Drew's album pick was, and I was too busy listening to the other hot banger that we were going to review. And I was like, oh, so they just gave it self-titled. Okay, well, I'm going to look this up. And I didn't know who was in the band until I did a Google search, and it was like, oh, what? And then I listened to it, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. The dissonance was all up in my cognition. But to say the least, I did not know that any of these people were doing anything except for sitting around in a pile of money.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about it musically. Drew, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes and elements?
Well, like has been alluded already. You hear, oh, hey, it's the singer from AFI, and you're expecting, maybe some horror elements, a little bit of whoa punk with a little bit of emo-y ness to it. But then you hear No Doubt, and you're like, okay, 90s ska revival, like, what?
Yo, come on. They're not 90s ska revival. They were.
Yes.
1993.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And then Eric Stefani left the band.
Yes.
When you hear the name No Doubt, like,
don't speak, brother.
You don't think of the weird.
I don't think of what we got. No, I don't.
Well, no, but you also don't think of the album Rocksteady, which is not Rocksteady. But that's
that is well-trod territory.
Nor there.
Yeah. Look, I might have gotten mad on the podcast before. Go listen to our self-titled No Doubt.
Hot banger.
But instead, the debut album from this is like, they don't do the normal supergroup thing of like, hey, let's blend our genres together and make something really awesome. It's like, nah, let's just do something fucking weird. So like, Davey's voice for this style, which is a very like new wave, like 80s aesthetic, I think fits super well. Like, just insanely well. And it's sort of an album that relies on really cool and varied instrumentation and that like new wave feel to make something that it doesn't feel like it would fit. Like in the 80s, like some of the other albums that we put out or that we're going to review, you could like drop them in with mixes of similar bands that they're taking inspiration from, but this one doesn't. It has a very, in my opinion, modern feel to a lot of it. Let's be honest. Yes, Gwen Stefani was the face of that band, but Tony Kanal is severely underrated as a bass player. That dude can write a bass groove like nobody's goddamn business. Tom and Adrian are great. The guitar player and drummer. For anyone asking, they are great on this record. I think the guitar work is not super complicated, but it works, and it works very well. I think the backing rhythms on the drums are really, really good. And then there's a studio musician, I believe Gabriel McNair is the name I wrote down here, which I believe is the studio musician that played saxophone on this, who actually brings out some really, really cool stuff. And also the keys, played sax and keys. And just really, really fantastic.
I just Googled, Gabriel McNair is basically a forever member of No Doubt. And also in this band. He played horns with No Doubt on like all the things you give a shit about.
That makes a whole lot of... Oh, wow. And he's played with like the Smashing Pumpkins. And, okay.
Wow.
Like, that's weird. Like, he has some
real... No, never mind.
He has some credits. Lenny Kravitz, Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins, No Doubt, and this band.
When did Green Day have a saxophone?
He plays trombone, keyboard, tenor saxophone, guitar, and he sings apparently. But keyboard and saxophone on this record, and really, really well done stuff. In my opinion, the whole record is very, very cohesive. It very much has a flow to it. There are parts where the lyrics get into like some of the weird horror stuff that Davey Havok's known for. But it doesn't usually dip into that. And it's something that, like, in interviews, they have been very proud that if you took this and you gave it to somebody and you didn't tell them who these guys were originally, you might not be able to tell right off the bat, unless, like, you were very familiar with Havok's vocal. But as far as the music goes, it doesn't sound like anything those guys produce. It sounds like something like, while familiar in a lot of its milieu, in that like 80s new waveness, is still like I said, like very different in its production, I would say.
Pat, what would be the theme song that catch your attention? How would you describe this album musically?
This is very, very, very much a like new wave band. Like, they are people who grew up on, like, you know, on Depeche Mode, Duran Duran, and 80s pop music in general, and we're like, hey, we can make whatever goddamn music we want right now, and this is the music we're going to make. And it turned out pretty darn good. It's all of the things I hated about Davey Havok post like 1999. The way he changed his vocals, I understand it's probably mostly from the fact that he got older and can't like fucking sing as high anymore. It works so well here. He like the vocals match the style of the music in a way that I did not expect. As stated before, I think the band part of No Doubt has always been underappreciated. As Drew said, Tony Kanal is a really great bass player. I've always been a fan of Adrian Young's strumming, although he's pretty chill on this record for what his normal thing is. And it just kind of works in a way that, like, it doesn't sound like anything any of these guys have ever done before. But it really is a testament to the fact that they're all pretty darn good musicians, and also that 80s pop music was kind of fun.
Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, I mean, this is a band made up of musicians that we're all pretty familiar with, but it's not who I would have expected to be a part of the new retro 80s sound revival that we're living through in these days. You know, this is an album of a bunch of guys that probably don't need any more money. There's like 3/4 of the band are almost 50 years old, and Davey Havok is like 42. Like they have reached the point where being the anti-establishment young. Well, they are none of those things. They are the established. They are the establishment, and they aren't young. So what the hell? Let's have ourselves an 80s influenced poppy record. So when you deal with people who have nothing to lose, really, and like this isn't something that was broadcast out, it probably does better for this album that people can listen to it and be like, I have no fucking clue who is banging the sticks or, you know, playing the bass. And from my understanding of Davey Havok, yeah, there are a whole lot less woes, but there's a whole lot less of the vocal affectation that things are different than what you have heard if you have only heard some of Mr. Havok's stuff. And as being an album of, you know, veterans who have been making albums for 20 years, like you can expect a level of quality. Like you don't play an instrument for like majority of your life and be bad at it if you're actually doing it. And for the amount of records that these guys have put out, especially AFI, they were like pumping out records like fucking nothing. Like I remember Warped Tours as a child. Like those are prolific bands, both of them. It's kind of neat to see them put together something that is so different than what you would expect out of them. There's nothing that's like especially groundbreaking or innovative or like, you know, fresh. because we're sort of probably on the tail end of the 80s sound, but they did it well, and they did it in a way that was tight. You also have a bunch of people that have played music together for a long time, and every time, if you have people that, like a bassist who plays with a drummer for as long as those guys have played, it's going to be tight. And if you got a guy who's been singing, like been a front man, he can be a front man again. And it's kind of a nice little, like, a study in throwing somebody, like, I don't know what, like, if you took Huey Lewis out of the News and you put, like, I don't know, Daryl Hall, like, what would it be? Like, you know, and if they were doing, like, heavy metal. Like, it's kind of like, it's kind of a farce when you think about it. But, like, it's kind of neat. I think this is great. As an exercise in making music, I think this is great.
Yeah, but if you'd only include Daryl Hall, you'd be missing John Oates' mustache.
You just have a mustache that floats like your Hatsune Miku holographic mustache that
have
just
you guys
floats.
seen Davey Havok recently?
Yeah.
You guys should check out the video that I posted in the chat for Kill for Candy. Let's talk about mustaches. Oh my.
I mean, he is not known for his mustache like Mr. Oates.
No, that's true. He's known for the
Johnny.
hair more.
Yeah.
G.E. Smith and the punk rock band. Yeah.
Yes. Nothing like a well-oiled mustache to really bring a band together.
Hootie in the News. Hootie in the News and Huey and the Blowfish. And
Exactly.
one of them does ska and the other one does, like, butt rock.
Yes. But yeah, let's talk about some of the key tracks. Because Drew, there's some cool
because
tracks.
Drew.
Because Drew.
Because me.
Yes.
This is your fault.
It's all your fault. That we're having this much fun. Drew, let's talk about some of the key tracks. Is there some really cool tracks to kind of zero in on this record?
Yeah. After I confessed, we'll go ahead and do the record breakers thing this time. I think it's a really, really perfect start. There's really cool thumpy bass. There's a lot of vocal range for Davey to play in. There's some cool airy guitar bits. A driving beat. Like, it is in my opinion, each super group member gets some airtime, and each one of them is doing something that I think plays 100% to their strengths on this one. There's some underlying synth bits that are really, really cool as well, that I think really are part of this album throughout, and it sort of like gets you into like this is the MO that we're playing in. All right, cool. Like, let's roll in. On the charts, you slap at the bass, man. I'm gonna be all ears. There's some plucky, thumpy bass in that that I find absolutely great. Again, Tony Kanal's a great bass player, and we need to recognize that as a society. And Show Me Mercy, closing out with a sort of dreamy, like very guitar filled song, I think is great. The layering in the vocals on this song were also really, really great. And the sax on this album, I think the sax on this song specifically is a really like cool way to just sort of underline the both weirdness and like familiarity of this album. It is very, very much something that I think was perfect to sort of end the record on.
Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Opening track, After I Confessed. It's just I'm gonna make a band comparison you hadn't thought of, but you will not unhear it. Flock of Seagulls. There's just a touch of I Run in the intro, and it's really good. This is, again, like I said, Davey Havok's vocals of late are not my thing, except in this context, they work really, really well. On the charts, again, for Tony Kanal being a fucking badass bass player who is underappreciated. And then Kill for Candy. It's very wonderfully 80s sounding, and the guitar tone is Pictures of You by The Cure. And it took me 45 minutes last night to place that guitar tone. I was listening to it, I'm like, this is really familiar. This is, oh my God, it's Pictures of You by The Cure. It's a guitar tone, except he's not doing it on a bass 6, I don't think. But it just, that hit me, and that's sort of this whole album is if you really, really like 80s, like new wave and rock music, like there is little bits and pieces of it all over this record.
Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, I hope I have something fresh to say because everybody be stealing my notes like they be oats. But after I confessed, the album opens up. It's very Duran Duran. With a dash of Oingo Boingo. There's some Dead Man's Party going on in there.
I could see that. I had not considered that possibility.
Oingo Boingo's pretty great.
Well, I mean, yeah. And you get to hear Davey Havok do his Davey Havok thing. Like when you listen to the first track, you know what you're getting into. Like it's not going to deviate from too much. Born to Lie. Is they literally had the echo like the from Iran from Flock of Seagulls, not like Tehran, but and all the Dead Girls that like Green Day called, they want their bass line back. No, I other people can use the Longview-esque punchy bass line, but with that bass line, they the beat is very one thing. The bass starts playing, then it puts shoes on, goes for a walk, which is nice. Everybody likes a bass that puts its steps in. The first time I listened to this song, I was like, this song sounds like it sound pretty good with some horns. And then right as soon as I thought that, a horn started playing. It like you could tell that this is a band that has played with people with horns because they left this giant like if you wrote out like this song as a score and you're like, okay, so or if you look at like all the frequencies that were like being filled with all the instruments, there's like this big gap in the middle. Like you're like, this is a place where either a second guitar or maybe it like some horns and the horns come. And like I thought that was really neat, the way that they brought that in and they had some, but like a lot of these songs are pulling stuff from others, and like Patrick was doing, like trying to figure out where did this come from? Where did the sound come from? And with this album and an album about a certain little Canadian girl, not little, she's an adult, and she's not a girl, that I listened to, I caught myself like being distracted from the songs themselves, trying to figure out what they were pulling from. Because yeah, there's like they have this big old Tonadex that they roll through. We're gonna pull out the Iran like guitar noise, and that pulled me away. I was just gonna like try and listen to the songs as they were, but like every song on this album has something that like grabs you by the balls and is like, this is your nostalgia, and let me get you in the clinch. But those were the tracks. Like also all the Dead Girls. I mean, like I always preferred to get my music about my horror music from the people that brung it from the beginning. Davey Havok wasn't the guy but I was happy to know that he can't even make an 80s synth album without having a song like that. Like he has to, like he's got the itch. Like it's his boulder that he's pushing up that mountain.
Yeah.
I gotta do something with like dead people or vampires or something. Come on, where am I gonna put this song?
Like underneath his button-down shirt, he's got on a fishnet vest.
Yeah,
like
dude,
nobody can see it, but it makes him feel comfortable.
Dude, come on, dude is straight edge. He's got to have a vice somewhere.
I mean,
right.
He's got to have a vice, and it's hard stuff.
Hey, and the dude survived all of those Warped tours. Like,
yes,
like
and no FX didn't.
Heck, members of Minor Threat didn't.
that is awesome though.
I believe Brian, like I remember reading a story of, I believe it was Baker taking Quaaludes on a Warped tour because that's the hip drug of the 90s.
Yeah, no, we don't have any leads. But yeah, those are tracks that I found noteworthy. they're all well done. Like there's not a stinker on this album.
Yes. I also like to have a note for as far as key tracks for Kill for Candy. For some reason, the band that kept coming up in my head was the Killers, so I wrote the note "Killers but good."
And what it's like Davey Havok if he grew
like
up in Utah. Is the Killers? It's
instead of New York to L.A.
Also, I looked up Carly Rae Jepsen's height. She's 5'2".
Yeah, she's not very big.
So she is kind of little.
Spoilers. God,
also,
spoilers.
Taylor Swift is 5'10". She's taller than Bruno Mars and Justin Bieber.
She's tall enough to stick her hand in one of those outdoor heating things and then confirm herself that it's hot.
Yes.
I saw it in a GIF.
Yeah. All right. So,
as I get PD homework, I'll look up the GIF.
Yes. So let's talk about some conclusive thoughts. Let's bring it back around the horn. Patrick, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
I enjoyed this record as it was good enough on like first listen to share it with Drew, but on the whole, like it listening to it again, like really, this is fun. I am okay with 80s revival being sort of the tone of pop music right now. It at least gives me something to give a shit about in pop music because I usually don't. But this is fun. I am here for silly supergroup of members of bands I used to love, but then hated when they changed and sold out and sucked. So I'm here for this.
Mm-hmm. Brett, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album?
If I wasn't told who was in this band, I wouldn't have guessed it in a million years. And that's a good thing. Because I never liked AFI, and like I only liked No Doubt when they was a self-titled album with horns is. But like I don't think this is gonna be in my regular rotation. It's just not my thing. But I'm glad I'm familiar with this album because not since Snoop Dogg and Willie did their album, their song together, has there been a mix of people I would never have expected to get together. Like, you don't put No Doubt and AFI in the same. Yeah, it's a novelty, and it's something that I can enjoy this novelty. It is noteworthy.
Yes. I think this album is really fun and really cool listen, and there's a lot to really like about it. I like AFI. I've liked old AFI. I like middle road AFI. I've liked AFI from different eras. I'm the one on this podcast that does. And I recognize Davey Havok's voice right away. I would be able to spot at least his voice, but in this context is definitely out of place, and I think, but not out of place, but catches me off guard, but perfectly in place in a way that is really fantastic, and works well. And I think overall the musicality is really fun, and it sends you on a nice little nostalgia head trip. If I say so myself, just listening to this in on the driving down at night on the Miami highways as I do, is a nice experience. But yeah, Drew. Last but not least, what are your conclusive thoughts on this album?
I brought this in because Pat said, "Oh, I'm never going to bring it in," and I'm like, after listening to it, I was like, "No, more people need to listen to this." Like, I've been shoving this.
He's not going to bring this album, but he brought Enter album here. Exactly.
Enter one of about a dozen albums here.
Exactly. Thank you, Drew.
And that's the thing is, like, I've been shoving this at friends of mine. I've been like, "No, like, this is weird." Like, I have a friend of mine who was like super into AFI, like super into AFI and like all that. Like, she was a self-proclaimed goth in high school that like wised the fuck up after high school. But I told her, I was like, hey, Davey Havok has a new band and it's great and you should listen to it. And she messaged me like 30 minutes later and goes, I think I'm obsessed with this entire record. It's something that is absolutely a ton of fun. It is something that is really, really well done. Again, these guys have been making music for decades now, and they're, weirdly enough, when you do something professionally for that long, you tend to get pretty good at it. And they're pretty good at it, and they got together and wanted to make a new wave record, and I hope they keep staying together and doing weird things, because this group of guys doing weird things, I am pretty alright with.
Yeah, and I'm pretty alright with it myself as well. This is a nice entrant into the long lineage of lead singer from one band with rest of other band history of music. Probably a little bit heads and shoulders and a lot of over a lot of them, not all of them, but really cool album.
Chickenfoot was alright.
Yes.
Chickenfoot.
That album that the rest of Stone Temple Pilots did, that one song was okay. I don't know. I haven't listened to the album. I only know that one song.
Audio Slave was a good time.
Yeah, Audio Slave was a good time.
Really?
A really good time.
It was way better than my time with Rage Against the Machine. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about those are our thoughts on Dreamcar. Now we get to our haiku reviews, the main event of the evening, the show, the Center Ring Circus show, something Ringmaster, something else, whatever. We get to our haikus. We sum it all up in poetic form. Super fun bit. Let's get down to it. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Some dudes from some bands. Works better than it should have. Genuinely fun.
Brent, what is your haiku?
Yes, it's old Davey, but there's not nearly as much ohs.
Yes. All right, my haiku. Incredibly catchy, pop-infused nostalgia trip, a fun, easy ride. Drew, what is your haiku?
Some awesome groove bass, oozing with absolute style. Thanks for this one, Pat.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you can find this album on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Follow along at home with us. And of course, next week's record is up. Next week's record is going to be provided by a guest. We're going to have a guest up next week. And it's going to be provided by our friend and yours, probably. One Becky, aka Giggle Loop, as we bring her in. Becky, what do you got for us next week?
Next week, I have Carly Rae Jepsen's album, Emotion.
Yes. So look forward to the next week. But that, of course, is next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. Patrick is out the swagger. Brett is the Hibbity Bear Bird. HIBBITYPIBBARD. Yes. Wow. Drew is the next Drucifrax. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast at gmail.com. Rebelli.net for listening to the shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and other places. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.